Welcome to New York's number two sports show. The Rangers are officially eliminated. They lose to the Carolina Hurricanes. Final score 7-3 in Raleigh. And somewhat ironic that the Rangers season, where they are eliminated by a team that the Rangers have eliminated in much higher stakes in 22 and 24. And the Rangers are swept in the season series by the Carolina Hurricanes, 4 games to none. So we just talked about the Rangers swept the Islanders in 4 games, and that was lopsided. This final scores weren't quite as lopsided. However, there's no doubt that Carolina is the better team. And I talked about something, in the past as far as the Rangers, really you appreciate teams that year in, year out, there's consistency as far as them being a perennial playoff team. Now, look, that all said, it's been more than satisfying for the Rangers to knock out Carolina twice in the second round to reach the Eastern Conference Final. So that gets into a deeper conversation, but, like, I'm just talking about, like, the Tampa Bay Lightnings of the world, the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, keeping it within the Eastern Conference. Obviously, Toronto, and I know even bringing them up is somewhat laughable, but just the fact that they've reached the playoffs year in, year out, there's something to be said for keeping that level of consistency. I'm talking about in the terms of regular season. Um, of course, you'd prefer sort of the sporadic and being, somewhat successful in the postseason. The Rangers, I would say, I would qualify that the Rangers have really dug down deep in some of these postseasons and really been very resilient. That's the weird thing about this core is that the problem with them is there's zero consistency as far as battle level. It really, I don't know if I want to call it year by year, but it's the same group of players that at times to me, I think about them as being ones that have been able to stave off elimination, have won big time games, um, with great comebacks and things like that, right? I mean, you think about last year in Carolina, and it's a full change, right? I mean, it was a little less than a year ago where Chris Kreider had a Herculean effort in the third period of Game 6 to save the Rangers from potential embarrassment, where Carolina was on the verge of tying that series up after being down 3-0 and forcing a Game 7. So, um, this was such a disappointing season, and that's putting it lightly. And, you know, I think this episode is a good place to have some of this discourse as far as because they, are officially eliminated, but that continues, right? I think, with a couple of games to go, a lot of the conversations will be more big picture. Um, and there will be a lot more to be had after the season as well, right? You figure that Peter Laviolette's going to be fired, pretty soon after the season. I think that Chris Drury deserves to be fired, although I don't think he will be. I just don't think that his body of work is good enough where it's okay for him to hire another head coach. Um, he's had two cracks at it as far as hiring Gerard Gallant and Peter Laviolette. Year ones in both years were successful. And then year twos in both cases were not. And sure, the second year of Gerard Gallant, was a good enough regular season with a very disappointing 7 game series loss to the Devils. This season was an unmitigated disaster, total disaster. To go from President's Trophy to this, I mean, one of the biggest drop offs from one year to the next. And some of it we could see coming, but not to this extent. Even the most pessimistic Ranger fan could not possibly see this being the result. And, you know, it wasn't even like injuries were a big thing. People talk a lot about how the 1992 Rangers won the President's Trophy, and then 1993 the Rangers missed the playoffs. Well, Brian Leach had a significant injury that year. That in and of itself is much more than anything we can talk about this season. And then the Rangers won the Cup in '94, so people want that to happen. But it's like Brian Leach ain't walking through those doors. Mark Messier ain't walking through those doors, and that's just to name a few. But let's keep it in the here and now for now. And Carolina had nothing to play for here. Carolina is locked into the 2 spot. They are going to host the New Jersey Devils, or at least they'll have home ice against the Devils in round 1. So I'll be rooting for Carolina for that reason. The Devils really being the biggest rival, at least geographically, that will be remaining in the postseason. But Rod Brindamore, he's always gonna have them ready to go, and that doesn't change here, and Carolina took it to the Rangers. The Rangers, You think about the season, absolutely pathetic as far as what they did against good teams, against playoff teams. The record is horrible. And I think it even goes beyond that, honestly, like, as far as how they played within those games was truly, truly brutal. And we are aware of the fact that they lost really bad games against bad teams, right? Like, there are a number of them that we can go back to just offhand, the Blackhawks, the Predators, um, some really brutal losses to the Buffalo Sabres, the Pittsburgh Penguins. There was a bad loss to them. We can go on and on about that, right? So that exists. But to me, the bigger issue was the Rangers' just total lack of competitiveness against good teams, particularly in the Eastern Conference, right? Because you did get some random wins, if you will. Like, the Rangers did beat Vegas twice, right? That did happen. There isn't really honestly a whole lot else to speak of on the Western Conference side, but there were, again, the Colorado games, while the end results were not great, they were in those games, for sure. Dallas, yes, it was an Igor effort that made it happen, but the Dallas games as well, like, they won one in Dallas. They really could have had one at the MSG. So for the West, maybe a little bit, the East, truly, truly brutal. Again, 0-4 against Carolina, 0-2-1 against Washington, 1-3 against the Devils, and even that doesn't do it justice. It was way worse than that. Um, Against Florida, currently 0-2, could potentially be 0-3. Against Tampa, 0-2, could be 0-3. Um, Toronto was one where early in the year, again, it was really thanks to Igor. They won to the one time they played at Toronto, they were able to get that win, but that was at a weird time, and it's not is the Rangers even played that well in that game. So that's the point I'm trying to really make here is the upper echelon teams, Rangers really were bad against. It was the Rangers deserved this fate really unequivocally. I mean, yes, like, you look at Montreal, for example, and do they have a really bad goal differential? Yes, the Rangers themselves have a negative goal differential. It's the point is like the Rangers just didn't have. I do think that the talent is slightly overrated, but the bigger problem is just the lack of will and the lack of really just want and tenacity to, get a playoff spot, right? We can talk about them going 4-15, and I'll leave it here just after I make this final point, and we'll go into the game. It was one thing to go 4-15, but the thing is they found themselves right back squarely in the playoff mix with what do we want to call it? Give or take 2 months to go, like whatever sort of timeline we want to say. The Rangers got right back in it really by the end of January, early February. Like it was okay, like as bad as they had done, uh, they control their destiny clearly, and they simply were not good enough, not even close to good enough. So to me, you know, it's not even about that anymore. It's not even about how bad November and December were. And again, with this loss, the Rangers officially will not have a 3-game winning streak since November, right? Because even if they somehow win the next 2 games, that's it. Season's over. There's only 2 games left. So that is incredible. And there's many, many other stats that, we can discuss as well in this game that may be season long, which is crazy. So the lineup was the same as the honor game, not unexpected there. I mean, for these next 2 games, I would really be highly disappointed. But I guess you can't be surprised by anything with this team. Is if Gabe Perreault and Brendan Hoffman don't play last season, I don't know what we're doing. Who will they take out? I don't know. And honestly, I am curious to see what are the lineup decisions. Again, is it going to mean that much in the long run? Probably not. But I am just curious to see the mindset of whoever's making those decisions, whether it be Drury or Laviolette, as far as who's in, who's out. Are there any injuries to veterans that now they're eliminated, they come out? So that remains to be seen. But the lineup was completely the same, forwards and defense, and combinations as well, to start at least. First period, I would say the first, and the goalie matchup was Igor Shesterkin versus Peter Kochetkov for the Carolina Hurricanes. I would say for the first maybe 3 to 4 minutes tops, the Rangers actually looked okay. But then really Carolina, the rest of that first period and the second period, they just took it to the Rangers. It was for the first 40 minutes, honestly, first 45 minutes of this game, it was really all Hurricanes. And, Carolina is a very good home team. But at 9:02, Jalen Chatfield scores the 7th goal of the season from Orlov and Jarvis. And As far as Igor is concerned here, it's one of two things. If he was screened, and it's possible he was, it was traffic in front of him, there's nothing you can say about that. If he somehow wasn't, it is one that he'd wanna have back because it was from distance, but I think he possibly didn't see it. What I wanna say, though, here is Braden Schneider had a really, really, really bad game. Honestly, among the defensemen, I thought his game really was the worst by far. He was a minus, and look, the plus minus does kinda show it too. He was -3. And, Braden Schneider, who I think will be here next season, one of the few that I can say with somewhat certainty, because look, like, stranger things have happened. Like, they do have Adam Fox and Will Borgen signed for multiple years on that right side. So it's not out of the total equation that he's not in it. But I think that they like Braden Schneider, but this was disappointing. I don't mean to single him out, but like pretty bad. And he turns it over in the offensive zone, and then he's unable to regain. There was chances for him to regain the puck, he just never was able to do it. And then Vincent Trocheck is out of position. Vincent Trocheck gives Jalen Sheffield an easy shot opportunity, and we've seen it too much, for the Panarin Trocheck line because they've mostly been together this season. In the defensive zone, it's just been bad. Missed assignments all over the place. And so that makes it 1-0 Carolina. And then they would score again at 17:46 of the first. Seth Jarvis scores his 32nd goal of the season from Aho and Jackson Blake. And again, it's basically the same unit. It's that Panarin line with Trocheck and Brodzinski, and Steiner's on again with Vakanainen. And this was a play where they might have missed the slat, where Trocheck gets slashed in like the wrist area. And so he's in pain, and it does affect the play, but Trocheck was unable to kind of really do anything productive. There was a puck in the corner that he couldn't even get to. Blake beats him. He rims it around. And for some reason, Valkonen and Schneider both go behind the net. And Aho finds an open Seth Jarvis. Nothing Igor could do on that one. Again, I don't know what Schneider and Valkonen were doing. Uh, Missed assignments all over the place. Disjointed hockey all season long. So we go to the second period. And Carolina, they take a 3-0 lead. At 2:02 of the second, Jackson Blake scores a 17th goal of the season from Jarvis and Aho. And Jackson Blake looks like a player for Carolina, the son of Jason Blake, the former Islander. And the Rangers just kind of come out sleepwalking in the second period. And I've said it a lot where I feel like Zibanejad specifically this season, these early period shifts for him, it's just really, I don't know. I've noticed it time and time again where he was on and part of it. And the Rangers really just could not keep the possession of the puck. As Keandre Miller, he is responsible for one of the turnovers. We know he's a turnover machine. And Igor tries to cover the puck, but Seth Jarvis legally gets in there and pokes it away from Igor, and then Jackson Blake stuffs it in with Mika kind of just standing there, not really doing much of anything in front of the net. And so that makes it 3-0 Hurricanes. And then at 12:59, Carolina makes it a 4-0 lead. It would be Mark Jankowski's 12th goal of the season from Carrier and Jost. And this was off of a lost faceoff by Sam Carrick. So you had the fourth line of the Rangers on. And, simply put, they kind of win a battle where might have been Jost who beats Adam Fox to the puck, finds William Carrier behind the net, who finds just a wide open Mark Jankowski in front. Very simple, very easy goal. Again, with the faceoff win by Carolina, had the Rangers kind of scrambling, and so it's a 4-0 lead. Then at 17:28, Matt Rempe is called for slashing Eric Robinson. Rangers do kill it off, and then they actually do score before the period's out. At 19:43, Will Cooley scores his 20th goal of the season, assisted by JT Miller. So that's good for Will Cooley. I'm glad that he hit that 20-goal mark. It was one that seemed like early on in the season he would definitely hit that. But I did figure, and it did happen, there was some regression. He wasn't going to stay at that level, but it is still good that he got there. And in a bad season, Will Cooley definitely took a step up. And that's a big thing. Will Cooley, I think, is a big part of the future and is one of the absolute sure shots, locks to be on this team next season, of course. And JT Miller was the one that on this play was able to, cause the turnover in the neutral zone and, kind of sets Will Cooley up for a little bit of a on the left side, goes in with some speed, a nice snapshot past Kochetkov to cut it to 4-1. So we go to the third period, and this is where the most action was for sure. And at 3:45, Carolina scores again. It'll be Jordan Stahl scoring his 13th goal of the season unassisted. And this was one where Mika Zibanejad was just too weak of a pass in the direction of Braden Schneider, trying to go back to the point. And then Jordan Stahl, who, look, as good as Jordan Staal is, he's not exactly a burner. He just kind of blows by Braden Schneider. And so it gives Jordan Staal just the clear lane, uh, to Igor's right, and Jordan Staal scores. Again, not a great job by Zibanejad. And again, Braden Schneider is negatively associated with a goal again in this game. So that makes it 5-1. And also, I want to mention as well, there was one line tweak where they went back to the Lafreniere with Panarin and Trocheck trio, and Lafreniere essentially swapped spots with Brodzinski. So it was essentially Kreider, Parson, and Brodzinski. So that makes it 5-1. Give the Rangers a little bit of credit. They were able to actually fight back a bit, which is something we don't normally see. Again, this was by and large a bad game by the Rangers, but within this moment, they didn't necessarily lay down. And at 5:06, Tyson Jost hooks Sam Carrick. So the Rangers get their first power play, and what do you know? They score on it. JT Miller scores his 21st goal of the season from Trocheck and Panarin. And it was off of a face. It was pretty quickly. They win the face-off. And the Rangers, what sucks? It's just so obvious. The Rangers, there's so much poke checking and just like the least amount of effort that can be exerted is what they'll do. Like, and that's why, like, certain games, they can kind of use the skill when they don't need to really give it their all. It's true. I mean, when they have to get physical, it's just not within them. It's pretty sad, actually. I'm just thinking about this goal, and I know it's in the power play, and they've struggled in the power play, so you'll take it, but it's just like, you know, I don't know. I guess it's unfair, but like it was a poach check by Trocheck that set up JT Miller to be wide open. Like, it's a play that the Rangers try for these plays, these sort of hope plays, these plays to kind of get out of the zone sometimes. And yes, if the low percentage chance does work, it could set you up for something great. But if it doesn't, too many times they go for the low percentage, high risk play. Anyway, and then that's just going on a tangent right there. But 5-2 at this point. And then the Rangers actually cut it to a 2-goal game. Adam Fox scores his 10th goal of the season from Panarin and Trocheck. So I guess I should also mention JT Miller with a 2-point game, Panarin and Trocheck with 2-point games. Adam Fox hits the 10-goal mark. So that's 4 straight seasons to 10 goals for Adam Fox. Even in a down year by Fox, the numbers are still pretty good. He's got like over 60 points and he missed a good amount of time. So look, he is still a very, very important piece to this puzzle for the Rangers and will be a part of that future for sure. Um, and next season is going to be a pivotal one for him. So it was a nice play where Panarin is able to kind of use a little bit of patience at the blue line, and Adam Fox is aggressive on the play and actually goes towards the middle of the ice. Panarin finds him, and Fox with a nice backhand and in with some elevation to it, and it makes it 5-3. Then after the play, you get matching minors on Martinuk and Vincent Trocheck. So it's a 4-on-4. And then after that, Rod Brindamore, which I didn't agree with this at all, he decides to challenge for goalie interference, and it was an unsuccessful challenge. I think Trocheck did, sort of initiate the contact, but it was out of the crease. Like, I didn't see enough to overturn it, and sure enough, the play on the ice, it would stand. What I don't really agree with, and look, it's the rules, right? So I'm arguing with the rules here. No one was wrong, right? But in that situation, it felt like 4-on-3 was what it should have been, right? Like, in terms of chronologically, they call those matching minors. It would have been 4-on-4 if not for the challenge. Um, but because of the fact that it was an unsuccessful challenge, it makes it 5-on-4. To me, it should go for, instead of adding the Ranger player to make it 5-on-4, they should take off the Carolina player to make it 4-on-3. That to me seemed, I understand kind of both sides, right? I'm not up in arms about it, but just, I don't know. In that moment, it's like, and that's a huge difference. We know how the Ranger power play has struggled, despite the fact that they scored earlier in this game. They were 1 point against the Islanders. It's a 5-on-4, and it did nothing. And to me, that was, very symbolic of what we've seen this year. Was that was the real chance right there. That power play was the opportunity that Rod Brindamore gave the Rangers that they could not take, and it was a bad power play at that. And the fact that Chris Kreider is the one that's on there, he is like the next guy up. And it was just a really, really bad power play. And the Rangers had their chances. Like, after that, JT Miller had a really good chance that somehow it didn't cross the line, where he sort of had a rebound play. Kochetkov got a piece of it, and it just did not go past the line. So the Rangers were very close to making it very interesting, but couldn't quite do it. Then they pull the goalie with like under 4 minutes left, and pretty quickly, Jordan Martinook scores his 15th goal of the season, an empty net goal from Jordan Stahl to make it 6-3. And this was a play where Chris Kreider turns it over. Fox passes to Kreider, who wasn't really ready for it and wasn't really strong on his stick. And boom, Stahl steals it, Martinook into the empty net. Peter Laviolette wanted to go down with the ship, and that's exactly what happened. And then Laviolette pulls the goalie again down 3, and it would be Stankoven that scores his 14th goal of the season from Slavin. So a lot of empty net goals against the Rangers of late. Doesn't make the stats look all that good, but just as well. But this was a play where JT Miller basically just, takes a tumble in the neutral zone. So it kind of turns it over, and Stankoven just buries it um, to make it 7-3. And that was your final. And that's it. Rangers, with that loss, are eliminated from uh, making the playoffs. And it's the first time that they'll have missed since 2021, but the first time they'll miss in a real 82 game season since 2019. So, it has been a while. I mean, on the one hand, all it was a 3 years in a row playoff streak that had a lot of stuff to it, obviously, in 22 and 24 within the playoffs. But the fact that they won the President's Trophy last year and then to go to this, it really deserves a deep, deep dive as to where things went very wrong. And that's more of a postseason conversation, more of a post-mortem talk, but it's begun. And so now there's 2 more games left. And the next one's at Florida. I will actually be in attendance at this one. And this is really because, and I'm down in Florida. It's the first time I'm going to be going to that arena. So for that, that's going to be pretty cool. But it's a game I'm going to be rooting against the Rangers, not actively, but I will be, certainly preferring the Panthers to win. There is nothing to be gained from the Rangers winning games here. I am looking for them to improve draft position, which can go pre-lottery right now anywhere from 7 to 13. So it's kind of simple. If let's say they split the next 2 games, they'll finish probably in the 10-11 range, would be my guess. If they somehow win both, then they're going to be closer to 13. If they lose both, then I think you're looking more at like 8 or 9. I don't necessarily like it's going to be somewhere somewhere in the middle. I think 7 or 13 is on both ends is kind of unrealistic, but it is still possible. And so that's kind of what you're looking at right now. And then what is confirmed is that it's going to be in the Rangers' hands. Like the lottery protection was 1 to 13. So what we know for sure is the Rangers will not lose the pick outright at Pittsburgh this year. They can either decide to keep it this year or move it over to next season. And I think that is still very much a question to me. And I think it really depends on where you finish, because there is a strong part of me that feels like the prudent thing to do is possibly to get rid of it for next year. But a team will never admit that, okay, like we're going to be bad next year. It's just not what they do. But I think you have to be practical. But again, that's a conversation for another day. Rangers are eliminated from the playoffs. 2 more games to go. Florida, for them, there is something on the line. They are going for home ice in a likely matchup against Tampa, and that does mean something. I mean, I think their lineup's been a bit bare bones. They have some of their top players that are hurt. But even all that said, I mean, given where the Rangers are at, a pretty good chance Florida wins. But again, this Ranger team knows how to frustrate, and it's been that way this year. So watch, like, do not be surprised at all if the Rangers do win one of these next 2 games, like, and especially that Tampa one, because that one's going to depend on if Tampa's still got something to play for or not. And that'll be the last game of the season. And that one will be at Madison Square Garden. So this next one against Florida is the penultimate game of the season and their last road game of the season against the team that knocked them out last year and a team that they are 0-2 against this year. We'll see if we'll see what that lineup looks like. Kind of unknown. I think there's a more than decent chance that Jonathan Quick probably gets one of these 2, and maybe this Florida one being one of them. And maybe they want to give Igor that last game at home. Again, when it comes to this part of the season, it's a complete unknown. And it's one that for the Rangers, we have not seen since really David Quinn's last year in 2021, where they were in a somewhat similar situation as well, where they were eliminated towards the end. They kind of just fell a little shy, but you kind of knew they weren't going to make it. But yeah, a lot of questions remain. This is kind of a fitting way for them to be eliminated, and that's exactly what happens. Is they really get beaten pretty soundly by the Carolina Hurricanes. The final score is 7-3, and now just 2 games to go on the season. The next one being their last road game of the year, and it will be at the Florida Panthers.